Germany, a land of the free and home of the brave. No, that was a different country. Germany, the land of poets and thinkers. Well, a bit antiquated, that one. I know, Germany, country of no humor, beer, efficiency and the Autobahn? Well, let's just leave that. Hello and welcome to yet another video in the Germany series by Ossi, the knowledge enthusiast. And Merry Christmas everyone! Today we not only do my first scripted video, but also we talk about 10 misconceptions regarding Germany that even Germans may fall for. Roll the intro. Germany is not only a country in the center of the European Union, both physically and economically, but has for millennia been a country in the center of attention. Be it as a formidable foe holding back the Roman Empire, becoming the Holy Roman Empire itself, and building a German wall between West and East Europe, or by simply bringing the entire world at the edge of collapse 2 times. There also are a lot of stereotypes about Germans and misconceptions, of course. Some hold true, some may fool those who never have been here for more than 2 weeks, but today we will take a look at those misconceptions and stereotypes that not only foreigners believe, but some, if not most Germans do as well. Are Saxons from Saxony? Did we invent beer and are we really that punctual and efficient? Let's find out in this video. But before that, this is actually the first scripted original video I have ever even attempted to do, so I would really appreciate your feedback and you sharing this magnum opus of mine if it turns out to be even remotely that. But why not just start with number 1, the Great German Autobahn. Some of us may know the famous quote that Hitler might have been a bad boy, but at least he built the Autobahn. And while it's true that the despised dictator rapidly advanced the works on the Autobahn system, done so by hundreds of thousands pesky unemployed who he promised work, and who built it mostly for propaganda purposes at first, he neither was the first in Germany, nor did he invent it. So unfortunately, no karma points for that little Adolf. In fact, the first road called Autobahn was built as the Avus in Berlin in 1921. But it wasn't a vroom vroom go fast road for everyone, but instead it was a closed vroom vroom go fast road purpose for car racing and test drives until 1940. The first real Autobahn, meaning a crossing-free car-only road that connects 2 places directly, was opened in 1924 in Italy and connected Milan with Varese. By the time the NSDAP came along in 1933, Italy had already a standing network of such motorways, which, that much has to be said, was often even praised by the Germans, especially the Nazis, who were on very friendly terms with the soon-to-be neighboring fascist dictatorship. It also was known that the plans for building a German network has been around since the early 20s in the Weimar Republic, which, like most plans in Germany, mostly did not survive planning stage. Hitler then took those plans as well as around 400,000 unemployed people and made good on his promise to provide work, rapidly advancing the construction of the Autobahn and many other constructional projects, some of them already preparing Germany for the coming wars. The roads were constructed after the Italian model and the Weimar plans, up to 1,000 kilometers a day between 1936 and 1938, until the war came along, during which prisoners of war, concentration camp inmates and forced laborers were forced to maintain the construction, which slowed down and was ultimately halted just so the Americans and Brits would have nice obstruction-free paved roads to rapidly advance towards Berlin. Only later in the Third Reich and after the war, NS writers and sympathizers would shift the focus to a point that only Hitler was appraised for inventing and building the Autobahn. At the same time, the Western road network transferred to the Federal Republic of Germany and were reconstructed and reshaped in the following decades, until the network we know today came along. Whereas socialist East Germany had no hurry in doing the same because they were too busy countries spying on their own citizens. But at least you now can test out the maximum speed of your favorite Formula 1 car on the Autobahn safe and without any repercussions, as we all know that there is no speed limit on the Autobahn. But sadly for all you race drivers out there, this is only partly true. Around 70%, including 10% that usually are worked on any given time, of the network has a so-called Richtgeschwindigkeit, a target speed of 130 km per hour. You won't get punished if you go above, but if something happens, like a crash, you are for a great part fully responsible, as you were going too fast to be safe. If you are still alive, that is. Apart from that, around a third of the network has strict speed limits that you are not allowed to go over. These are usually urbanized parts of the Autobahn. The rest, around 10% as mentioned, has temporarily changing limits, mostly for construction sites, because apparently road workers do not like cars flying over their working space. Lastly, what vehicle you use has also influence on the possible specific speed limit for you. For example, buses, trucks, cars with a caravan or follower, and bikes with followers are only allowed to go at 80 or even 60 km per hour. And if you can't go faster than 60, you are not even allowed to use the Autobahn. So enjoy it while it lasts, because currently there are some strong debates going on having a fixed speed limit on all the Autobahn, the whole network, to reduce fatality rates due to accidents. Fun killer, those politics. Number 2. Saxons are from Saxony. Ah yes, the Saxons. Spring of confusion for many hundreds of years and the source of laughter just because they have the unsexiest dialect in all of Germany, even behind Swabin. Even though there are 3 states in Germany that bear the name Saxony, meaning land of the Saxons, namely Saxony, Saxony-Anhalt and Lower Saxony, actually only 1.5 of them have ever seen a real proper Saxon, blimey. They got their name, of course, by the Romans, which in their everlasting efficiency collectively used the term for a number of tribes they viewed as seafaring robbers and plunderers, much like the Vikings centuries later. They did not even care the tiniest bit to actually learn their names, and instead took a look at their sexes and henceforth told everyone that would want to hear it that those are the people with the tiny sex, or skarma sex, knives, the Saxons. While the exact territory the Saxons lived in are not quite mapped, largely to a lack of accurate maps of Germania and a lack of unharmed mappers that attempted to change that, it is known that they have never lived in those regions that we today know as Saxony and Anhalt. Most common consensus is that they had their territories between what is now the eastern Netherlands at the Elbe, more precisely along the North Sea, as well as South Holstein and the Harz. Lower Saxony is pretty much the most accurate remnants of their former settlements and area. To the north, they were neighboring another little group just known as the Angles, which would go on to settle Britannia, an idea they might have stolen from the Saxons, who founded the kingdoms of East Saxony, Essex, West Saxony, Wessex, and South Saxony, Sussex, but no Nossex, but instead a Middlesex, which wasn't a kingdom, and then led to the realms of the Anglo-Saxons, or as we know it today, England. Back to the European mainlands, the first Saxony within the Frankian kingdom and later the Holy Roman Empire was located fairly within their former homeland. Between Henry I, a few Ottos, and Henry II, they became kings of Germany and even emperors. With time, in contrast to the tribes who went west and over the North Sea during the Great Migration period, the Duchy of Saxony wandered southeast, mostly because the duchy was shattered by Barbarossa until only a small area at the Elbe survived. That later was integrated to the Margravate of Meissen. Since the duchy had a higher title and lords tend to like better titles, the Margrave chose to call himself Duke of Saxony henceforth. A bit later, after Napoleon conquered Europe without dynamite, the duchy would ultimately become the Kingdom of Saxony, and later, when Weimar Germany came along and somewhat abandoned those pesky nobles totally peacefully, no really, everyone was just fine with it, it became the Free State of Saxony, even though they had nothing to do with the area of tribes of the Saxons, but rather Sorbs, who lived there since the 7th century. Saxony-Anhalt, on the other hand, just poofed into existence in 1947 by uniting the Free State of Anhalt with the Prussian provinces of Magdeburg and Halle-Meeresburg, which the Free State of Prussia had created in 1944 by dividing its provinces of Saxony. It only existed until 1952, when the region was split again. Only in 1990, as part of the reunification, the state was remerged and therefore recreated. As the Saxons lived to the west of the Elbe, only a small part in the northeast, including Magdeburg, has actual Saxon roots. So sadly, despite being born in Saxony, I too am not a Saxon. But today I live in a former Saxon area because I live in Hamburg. So, number 3. Beer was invented in Germany thanks to the Reinheitsgebot. Oh well. If Germany is known worldwide for only one thing, it would either be starting world wars or Angela Merkel. But cars and beer are pretty much right behind. In fact, German beer is seen as one of the best in the world, like Scottish whiskey or French wine, and we do enjoy a glass or two ourselves pretty well. In 2017 there were almost 1,500 breweries in Germany, a vast majority of them in Bavaria alone, since often even small restaurants would have their own brewery in the back of their house, and there are just so many abbots. Due to the pandemic, that number shrank significantly, but still remains at over 1,000 in all of Germany and will surely regrow. And they all brew their beer by the so-called Reinheitsgebot, the purity command, issued in 1516. So let's get the biggest elephant right out of the room. No, beer was not invented in what is now or was at any point in time German. In fact, it was invented even before German tribes existed. It is said to have originated in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East around 10,000 years ago. In Central Europe, the earliest real proof for beer is dated to the 3rd millennia BC and was found in Denmark. At least, Germans might actually be the first ones to have put hop in their beer, as found in an Alemannic grave in South Germany dated back to the 6th century AD. But the hop variant would not be prominent until the 16th century, apart from Hansa cities and abbeys where it thrived. Hamburg alone had more than 450 hop-based breweries in 1376, which is respectable for such a small city at that time. And most of those, as it was common even in England, were owned by women. Also, of course, monks were famous for brewing beers, especially in what is now South Germany, even more especially Bavaria. Germany is not even the country with the highest beer consumption per capita, a title that belongs to the Czech Republic, inventors of Pilsner, followed by Austria, Romania, and only then Germany, with Bavaria taking the lion's share, in 2015 consuming around 57% of the entire amount alone. What beer we drink is pretty regional. Usually the most drunken variant is Pilsner. In the south, especially Bavaria, wheat beer and dark beer are most common. In the west, especially Cologne and Düsseldorf, there is a long fight between Cologne's Kölsch, a pale, highly attenuated, hoppy, bright, top-fermenting lager, and the Düsseldorfer Alt, a dark, copper-colored, top-fermented yeast ale. All other places in that area are pretty okay with Pilsner. Other variations include Berlin's white beer, Gose, traditional from East Germany, Märzen, Bock beer, smoke beer, or lager. Even the Reinheitsgebot on its own is a myth. Germans themselves believe that. In fact, the term was invented by Bavarian politicians in 1918 to advertise and promote Bavarian beer based on a long-lasting tradition, referring to an old document issued by the Duchy of Bavaria in 1516, which regulated the prices and ingredients for Märzen and other beers, stating that they shall be exclusively made out of barley, hop, and water. It was a reaction onto many complaints about bad and overpriced beer, which actually backfired, as then brewers would use even cheaper ingredients and forge beers to keep their margins. The order also did not last long. Coriander and laurel was allowed from 1551, juniper and cumin were added in 1615. Only in 1861 the original version was made into law again, scratching the later editions. Today the Reinheitsgebot has no real relevance anymore. It was surpassed in 2005 by the Beer Regulation Act. Strict regulations only apply for bottom-fermented beer that is intended for the German market. Other beers might differ from that, and imported beer has not to follow those regulations anymore at all. Even for bottom-fermented beers you can get special allowance to differ from the regulations and the key ingredients. When taking a tipsy step back in the beginning, meaning after 1918, the Reinheitsgebot was usually referred to as Bavarian Purity Command, used for various legal and import inquiries revolving around naming beers with sugar or other ingredients beer in Bavaria. The term later became the German Reinheitsgebot sometime after Germany joined the EU's predecessors, when breweries fought against importing foreign beer. But oh well, the original text was not only not some kind of actual purification legislation, it wasn't even the first. Several towns and cities, especially in Bavaria, had several brewing orders in place, dating back as far as 1156 in Augsburg, which stated that if a beerman would pour bad beer, he shall be punished. The oldest order regarding ingredients dates back to Nuremberg 1303, when it was, due to a drought and famine, stated that only barley might be used to make beer, no other grain. The first order, only allowing barley, hop and water, was issued 1319 in Eichstätt. The oldest law regarding food and drinks dates even back to the 18th century BC with the Codex Hammurapi, containing the same order as in Augsburg 1156. Number 4. Good old German efficiency and punctuality. Among the first things that everyone says when they describe Germans is that they are punctual and efficient. These are not meant as insults, but as compliments. Germany is internationally often cited as a model country for efficiency, its people for their good working morale, punctuality and again their efficiency. While this at first glance sounds great and like Germans are able to do anything, really hits hard, especially for those that attempt to live here. This is, after all, because there are two things Germans love even more than punctuality and efficiency, and this is outdated practices and bureaucracy. Germany plays a leading role in IT tech, digital products and solutions, but at home, government offices or courts still use fax machines. Many areas in Germany do not even have DSL internet, and getting reception is sometimes even within big cities a nightmare. Not to speak of the so-called Valley of the Unaware, an area in Saxony just east of Dresden that is regarded to having the worst reception in all of Germany. The term itself was already used in GDR times, when this same area was amongst the only ones in East Germany that would not receive any Western German TV stations. How efficient Germans can be can also be seen in the three latest big construction projects: the Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, the Baer Airport in Berlin and the train station project Stuttgart 21, all of which were finished only after many delays and billions over budget, except the latter, which is currently still in construction, expected to be finished in 2025, 6 years after the first advertised finishing date of 2019. And we won't even start to talk about our response to the coronavirus, which, mostly because of the whole federal system, was bad, inconsistent and just confusing for everyone, since what was legal in one state could be illegal in another state. This led so far that, especially in smaller states, just crossing a street would mean that there are whole different rule sets in place. Speaking of trains, a little bit earlier, if you want to see German punctuality, look no further than the Deutsche Bahn. According to this statistic in 2021, only 75.2% of all trains were punctual. Yay, you might now say. Well, that sounds not bad, but keep in mind that every train arriving within 6 minutes of the scheduled time counts as punctual, so the thousands of 5-minute delays are unaccounted for. Also, this statistic does not include trains that just were cancelled. In 2017, 42,956 trains were cancelled completely and almost 100,000 at least partially. Also, this number does not include regional trains that usually are more punctual due to the relatively short distances and well-planned tight schedules. Some of them, called S-Bahn or Schnellbahn, stands for fast train, operate pretty much like a normal subway would and are mostly found in bigger cities like Hamburg and Berlin, as well as area with high population density like the Rhineland. But even those, as well as subways and buses, are not nearly as punctual as, for example, Japanese trains. There are also no automated subway lines in Germany like in many other countries, except in Nuremberg, where actually 2 of 3 of their lines already run automated since 2008. Only in September 2022, the first automated S-Bahn of the world was starting its time in Hamburg, but only for a very short track and only 4 trains. At the same time, the first fully automated subway in Germany outside Nuremberg is currently being built, also in Hamburg. Berlin will follow starting in 2025. Yes, as former German Chancellor Angela Merkel in the pre-network times of 2013 said, the internet is new territory for all of us. Germany clings on old traditions, gets stuck by bureaucracy and thousands of rules and guidelines, both self-inflicted as well as required by the EU. Getting things done, be it as a private person or company, is extremely difficult and sometimes the direct opposite of efficient. And don't you ever expect to be greeted with the same punctuality that is expected of you when you make any appointments in Germany. No matter if doctors, offices or companies, be prepared to wait, sometimes even a whole while, until they have time for you. But also never be late on your appointment, because otherwise it might get cancelled. Number 5. Getting out of jail free and not even in when under 14? Another thing you might already have heard about Germany is our very generous prison system. Not only are you treated like an actual human being with dignity and some respect, with several benefits, like sometimes even a TV and a cell you can decorate and set up just like at home, in comparison to other countries where you are just scum, treated and crammed together like animals. But also, if you just feel like it, you can just break out and walk free, without the law being able to charge you for that. And yes, this is true. German law accepts and values the natural human's urge to be free. So in fact, you can't have any added charges if you break out. At least not for the actual breaking out part. But of course, pity as our bureaucracy is, you would have to do so without breaking any other rules and naked. Why? Because of course you can be charged with every new crime you commit in the process of getting free. This includes, but is not limited to, theft if you take your prison clothes, damage of property if you take the breakout literally and dig a tunnel, for example, mayhem if you hurt anyone on your way out, bribery if you bribe someone, threatening if you threat someone, etc., etc. You see, it is almost impossible to get out of prison without breaking any law, even though the deed itself is legal. And Don't you think you can just get others to help you? You have to seek your freedom yourself, of course, as assisting you in that would be a charge for freeing prisoners and could lead to a hefty charges to your supporters. Also, do not start a riot and use that to escape, because in order to start a real riot, at least one crime has to be committed. So the lawmakers pretty much thought of everything, but yes, your freedom is really valued. But what if you really want to commit a crime and go unpunished? Well, if you insist, you could try getting younger and do so as a child below the age of 14. This is because here in Germany, only those of the age of 14 and above can be criminally responsible for their deeds. Younger ones cannot be arrested, charged, or even convicted for any crimes they commit. But you wouldn't be here if you wouldn't already know that this is another misconception even Germans might believe. You see, just because you cannot be convicted does not mean you can't be punished. If you are 7 or older, you can be held responsible for damages you do and forced to repay them, which then usually your parents have to lend you. If you commit a bigger crime, like murder, rape, manslaughter or stuff like that, things anyone would avoid you for, wishing you could avoid society somehow, you can also be held responsible. In any case, not a court, but the Youth Welfare Office is responsible for you and can decide what to do with you, little rascal. The process is pretty much the same as for adults, with slight differences in naming. You don't get arrested, you get in custody, and after that you either might go to a new family, a psychiatry, a closed educational institution or something like that, not a jail. You can even have a trial, which then isn't about conviction, but is about to find out what to do, like just keeping you in closed custody for longer. Different names, same effects. It is also a myth that you have to be judged according to juvenile criminal law until you are 21. No, between 18 and 21, depending on your mental capabilities and psyche, both laws, the one for adults and the one for youth, might be applicable after psychological evaluation. Lastly, while we're at it, in contrast to other countries that might or might not be situated on the opposite side of the Atlantic, German law is usually fair and just and has never the goal to put humans behind bars, if avoidable. 70% of prison sentences are suspended for probation. Overall, also in 2021, around 700,000 people were sentenced by German judges. 550,000 of them, or almost 80% of which, ended in a fine. Around 100,000 were sentenced to jail, most of which were then suspended for probation. In 2021, only slightly more than 40,000 people were imprisoned in Germany overall, the majority of which in prisons, almost 600 in preventive detention and around 30,000 in juvenile detention. Over all three categories, just barely over 2,500 were women, 2 of which in preventive detention. That equals to around 0.05% of the population. In comparison, the US has over 0.6% of its population behind bars, more than 2 million people. Number 6. Kinderchocolate, one of the best German chocolates. Even though our friends on the other side of the pond in the US might not enjoy Kinder Surprise eggs as well as the rest of the world does, it is commonly known that Kinder Chocolate, named after the German word for children because it is made for children, is among the best Kinder Chocolates in the world. Everybody loves it, and even Germans associate it with a German invention and product. But of course, it's a myth. While today more renowned for traces of bad stuff, bacteria, salmonella and viruses, which somehow are not cool on food, the product itself has only little to do with Germany. Actually, in 1946, the 1898-born confectioner Pietro Ferrero had the idea to start a chocolate company in Alba, not Jessica, but the Italian city just south of Torino. This is where he most famously invented the most delicious nougat-based cream in the history of creams, Nutella. When he passed only 3 years later, in 1949, his son Michel Ferrero ultimately took over the company and steered it to worldwide fame. Among other things, he sat in an office in 1968 and proposed a revolutionizing idea to his fellow officials and producers. A chocolate that would be palatable to children using chocolate and at the same time reassuring mothers with good old healthy milk. The same year, Kinder Chocolate saw the light of the day in Italy and Germany before spreading to the rest of the world. Fun fact: the kid on the packaging from 1973 onwards was the German Günther Euringer until, not after several recreations of his image to fit in with the current style, in 2005 the Italian kid Matteo Farnetti took over. Since 2019 there is a new face which is only partly visible and not named. So there you have it, German name but Italian product, just like the Autobahn, pasta and Holy Empires. Today, Kinder products that include a huge variety of brands are mostly produced in Italy, Germany and Belgium, but still as German as the clothing company Harmond & Blaine, which is also Italian. Number 7. The Forbidden Nazi Memorabilia, Songs and Symbols. This topic is actually a bit tricky, but if you ask any German about Mein Kampf, Nazi salute, swastika or the first verse of the national anthem, they will most likely tell you that those things are illegal and should never be touched, done, read or sung by anyone ever. Period. While that is mostly true, it doesn't mean those things are illegal. Let's start with the Deutschlandlied, the song of Germans. It was written in 1849 by August Heinrich Hoffmann, so long before a unified Germany was even a thing, 30 years prior to be precise, written by a liberal in support of unification. It starts with the verse Deutschland, Deutschland über alles, meaning Germany, Germany above all else. This was not, as perceived post-World War II, a call to value Germany and Germans above all other nations and people, but, as mentioned, advocating for the unification of Germans, valuing the unity of Germany higher than the then-present feudal state system of dukes, kings, princes and several small single states. This verse later was adopted by Nazis to call for a great empire and got the meaning we all associate with it today. The reason why we only use the third verse today as our national anthem to the melody of Joseph Haydn lies within the problematic implications nowadays with the first verse, as well as the fact that it's just out of date, describing a Germany that reaches from the Mosel into the Memel, Prussia's border with Russia in today's Lithuania. The second verse was just meh from the start and had also implications that might have been misunderstood, praising German women and loyalty, as well as wine and songs. Therefore, in 1950, then-Chancellor Adenauer wanted the German people to sing only the third verse with the already established melody, which 2 years later was made into German law. In fact, according to the letters that were used to publish the decision, then-President Theodor Heuss agreed to use the melody in combination with the German song as national anthem without specifying any restrictions. Mainly for time purposes, only the third verse was then used for official occasions. Only after reunification in 1991, it became law to only use that third verse. And yes, singing the song was briefly banned by the American military authorities after the Second World War. But today, playing or singing the first and second verses, which are not officially part of the national anthem, is not a punishable or prohibited act. However, singing the first verse in particular is sometimes seen in public opinion as an expression of a nationalist attitude, and you should just avoid to do so. Next, Mein Kampf, Hitler's #1 bestseller and embodiment of the evil guy spitting out the whole plan to the hero before falling to his demise. The book has a bit of a special place within German laws, but not because it should have been banned, but for simple copyright reasons. As explained in an earlier video, Mein Kampf, written by the mustache man himself, was published in 2 parts in 1925 and 1926. Especially the first part, written in prison by a convicted criminal from Austria who attempted to overthrow the Bavarian government only a few years prior, became an actual bestseller in the Weimar Republic and was widely discussed. After World War II, the book was initially mostly destroyed, but not altogether. Still, it was illegal to print new versions of the book, but not because of its content, but because of Bavarian copyright law and a complicated series of confiscations, court processes, and redistributing of assets. So in the end, until 2016, the actual government of Bavaria held all German copyright to the book and prohibited any reprint pursuing any violation all over the world. In the meantime, in 1979, one of the highest courts in Germany decided that owning, selling or buying the original old versions of the book is not punishable, since the book, which was prior seen as verfassungsfeindlich or anti-constitutionary, can't in fact be directed against the constitution that has not even existed by the time of its creation. This even was true for those versions of the book that had swastikas on them. Following this, today there are not even reprints, since the copyright was ended. They are also free to sell without any editing for educational purposes. However, the original 1943 reprint was put on index in 2018 as a danger to the youth. It is, strictly spoken, a grey zone to distribute the book depending on the intention. As stated, educational purposes are fine, targeting right-wing people and neo-Nazis is a no-no. Lastly, swastika and memorabilia. As just mentioned, there are instances upon which the usage and display of the swastika and other Nazi symbols graphically or physically is not illegal. These are not only in context of its original origins, meaning within some cultures and religions, but also regarding to actual Hakenkreuze used by the Nazis. According to the law, these swastika are illegal to be used within political context, but free to use in sense of freedom of art as well as civic education. This means you can see them in history books and documentaries as well as movies, paintings and, since a few years, sometimes even in games, as games are viewed more and more as a form of art in Germany. The same applies to the Hitlergruß, the Nazi salute and memorabilia. They are free to use in education and arts, as well as in limited form within the borders of freedom of opinion, as long as the intention is not to give them the good old reboot. For example, to signal a cop that you think his methods of peacefully detaining you after you throw rocks and set barricades aflame are like Nazis did it, then you can do it. Also allowed is the use in an obviously critical way to distance oneself from the ideology behind it. The high illegality of all other intentions and purposes also applies to symbols, gestures or slogans that are very similar to those used by Nazis. And for government officials and civil servants, there is a zero tolerance policy. You can and will lose your job even if you use symbols or gestures that do not explicitly fall under the law, especially if you have tattooed them on yourself. Additionally, highly illegal under any circumstances, for the most part even in art as in 18 other mostly European states, is it to deny the Holocaust. This is also not covered by freedom of speech and not by educational purposes, and also nothing that you can joke about. According to paragraph 130, section 2 of the Criminal Code, a custodial sentence not exceeding 5 years or a monetary penalty shall be imposed on anyone who, in public or at a meeting, approves of, denies or plays down an act of the kind described in section 6.1, which is the Holocaust, of the International Criminal Code committed under National Socialism in a manner likely to disturb the public peace. In other words, denying the Holocaust will get you in jail or a hefty fine. Number 8. The good old German flag. Black, red and gold, horizontal stripes of equal thickness, That is the modern German flag, after a few hiccups, the one everyone agrees with. The colors go way back and were first used during the wars for freedom against Napoleon between 1813 and 1815. Some may claim that the colors have already been used in the Middle Ages, which sure did help the flag to gain traction. But this is not the sole topic. The meaning is too. You know, like with Ukraine, where the blue symbolizes the blue sky and the gold, the golden fields, or the Union Jack, a mixture of English cross and Scottish cross, and as well as the stars and stripes representing the 50 states as well as the 13 original colonies. So what do the German colors stand for? What do they represent and where do they come from? Well, this answer might get any German in stutter, since there are so many proposed reasons that it is hard to find out which is the truth. If you even know one of them, which mostly nobody does. Unlike the Prussian flag that was later used as the German Empire flag, representing the Prussian black and the Hanseatic red and white, if you get any answers, you might have heard of Holy Roman Empire reasons, uniforms, political parties that are represented, namely the CDU, SPD and FDP, the three biggest parties in the German parliament of 1949, which are described with black, red and yellow. Or just no reason, no meaning at all. Well, the truth is actually a bit of some of them. So let's get back a few moments. Before there was Germany and before angry students doing uprisings in the 1830s first using the German flag in its today's form, there was the blessed by the Pope and therefore holy, including Rome and lots of its former territory and therefore still Roman and definitely Empire, just to shortly tackle on another misconception about the HRE being none of them, started by Voltaire in the dying days of the Empire. In this, the emperor's colors were a golden shield with a black eagle on it. Starting in the 14th century, beak and claws of the eagle were painted in red, which now concludes the well-known national colors, without the red being recognized as such. Another legend tells the story of Barbossa, who was presented with a black, red and golden carpet on his way, leading when he arrives to the election to be King of Germany. There is also a story according to which peasants in 1525 used the black, red and gold flag for their uprising, at least according to Friedrich Engels. Yes, the Friedrich Engels, who conveniently lived around 300 years later. In truth, the flag, in a sense of a somewhat unified Germany, developed over time, but a later one. Starting with the aforementioned soldiers in 1813, the so-called Lützow's Freikorps. The troops wore black uniforms with red lugs and gold-colored brass buttons. Historians cite quite pragmatic reasons for this choice of colors. The members of the Freikorps, among them many students and academics, were self-supporters. They were therefore dependent on converting clothing they had brought with them into uniform. And this was easiest with black as the basic color, gold-colored brass buttons were common and easily available, and red was the badge color for lapels and lugs. According to a letter of one of the company's officers, he saw a black and red flag with golden fringes and a phrase on it once in Dresden, and liked it so much he wanted to lead his men into battle under a similar colored banner with his own phrase, "From black night through red blood towards the golden sun." The king wouldn't let him though. Afterwards, in 1815, when the idea of a unified Germany would gain much popularity, especially among students in Jena, many of which belonged to that Freikorps, some of them founded a fraternity which made a red, black and red colored banner with a golden oak branch in its middle to their flag, claiming to fight towards the common goal of a strong German nation. On to why they chose these colors, not even them knew. Some claiming it to be because of their uniforms in the earlier wars, some claimed that this was not the case. Another one claimed it were the colors of the Vandals. 50 years later, another founder reinstated the claim they came from their uniforms, which then themselves came from the medieval origins of the empire's crest, forgetting that the national colors were just gold and black and the red came in later and was never made official. Over many more years and regencies, the flag was used, abandoned, used again, abandoned again and used again plenty of times in some variations. No one seemed to have any ideas on what new meaning the colors could get, or if they ever had a meaning at all. So as of today, at least unofficial, they represent the night, the blood and the golden sun rising. Another interpretation is the black of servitude, from which in bloody red fights the light of freedom emerges. Even on the official homepage of the Bundestag, the German parliament, it is stated that no one knows exactly where the colors originate. It is also stated that the popularity almost only stems from the fact that the colors were wrongly seen by the people as a continuation of the medieval German kingdom. Number 9. Made in Germany as a quality sign. Well, this is not really a common misconception about Germany, and most people might actually already know about this. So bear with me, since there are still people even in Germany that do not know the origin of Made in Germany. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. Made in Germany in the past, made in West Germany, is a hallmark of alleged efficiency, quality and durability. But actually there are outright two misconceptions in this one. The one you all know, why it was originally done, and one you might not know, when it was done. Many of you might scream now at their screens, shouting that it was done after World War I or World War II or during the hyperinflation, so no one would accidentally buy German low-quality products. But while you could easily be further from the truth, you are at least a few decades away. It all started way before that, in the prosperous and definitely perfect Victorian times. When Britannia ruled the waves, the empire was collecting smaller underdeveloped regions like Pokemon cards, and the Industrial Revolutions was kicking in, especially in Great Britain. And what the Brits were most known for was an invention made by Sir Henry Bessemer, a procedure to mass produce high quality steel for a low price. Naturally, the Brits were then using the steel for almost everything and even sold it to the whole world for a nice margin, of course. But what is better than buying foreign steel to high prices? Well, just copying them, of course, and do it on your own. Creating products you can then, amongst other things, just sell to the Brits, who were swimming in money, and while you at it, unify and speedrun the whole industrialization thing to a point that you even surpass the British and become arguably the most powerful nation in the world. Easy, right? That's what the Germans thought and then just did. But in the process of doing that, they initially made products of seemingly worse quality than the Brits, which were not amused and wanted to protect their poor citizens from such imposterous waste. Therefore, they started to label their imports, amongst others from Germany, with the seal Made in Germany, which was intended as a warning for the Brits. Do not buy those bloody cheap and bloody bad products from the primitive lands to the east. The seal was sealed starting in 1887 with the Merchandise Marks Act, which stated that all products have to be marked with their country of origin. This was, at that time in stark contrast to the initial thought, rather a reaction to the rapidly increasing quality of foreign products, which, for example, with a machine built in Chemnitz in 1862, were more and more seen as even superior to the British counterparts. Germany, meanwhile, took such comments and marks as a challenge, and industrials started to increase their quality. Henceforth, many products were constructed superior to the British ones in either quality and/or price-performance ratio. Just after implementing it, the seal more and more became a sign of high craftsmanship. And now we come to the possible starting dates you might have in mind. During the First World War, for rather obvious reasons, Great Britain had an interest in its people stopping to buy these very good indeed German products and financing their enemy, so the seal became some kind of ban mark to boycott as part of the Buy British campaign, a tightening that would survive the war, especially during hyperinflations and the Second World War. And then, in the end, after decades of boycotting German products, came the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle of Germany. Founded by the occupants, especially the US, Germany gained back its industries and got wealthier and wealthier, producing some of the highest quality goods in the world, making the Made in Germany finally and forever into a seal of approval, a mark of highest quality. Today, Germany is one of the top 5 industrial nations in the world, and its products are looked after worldwide. The country usually ranks as number 1 of 52 states in the annual Made in report, even though what can and can't be marked as made in Germany has become more and more loosely. So a product made like 90% outside of Germany and only thought of or receiving its finishing touches inside of Germany can still be described as made in Germany. Number 10. Germany is unified. Lastly, we have a misconception that even Germans have, and especially German politics have. Germany is unified. What sounds so simple could not be further from the truth. Okay, the Federal Republic is mostly intact, no one has recently tried to overthrow the government, and only a few states have growing movements to leave the country and be on their own, and there are currently no actual movements to rebuild the wall, at least not in Germany, but under all this happy-go-lucky facade, there is something brewing, something strong. In fact, Germany is pretty divided in many aspects that could endanger our unity. While not as strong and even violent as like in France or the US, the idea of a unified Germany hardly holds true, which is not as bad as it might sound at first. One of the main reasons is Germany's history. The first German unification happened in 1871, only 150 years ago. Before that, it was for 1,000 years each province on their own. People did not belong to the Holy Roman Empire or the Regnum Teutonicum, the German kingdom. They belonged to the free cities of Hamburg, Frankfurt or Lübeck. They belonged to the Duchy of Saxony or Bavaria, both kingdoms even during a huge portion of the 19th century. They belonged to the provinces, states and places they lived and would fight in wars on many occasions against other German states, provinces and places. Their national identity was pretty small and something that kept stuck, even in the young German Empire and beyond. Even when they come together for a common cause, however dumb it may be, like World War I, they were usually split in groups from the same place: a Prussian battalion, a Bavarian battalion, a Thuringian battalion, a Hamburgian battalion. They all did fight more for their regions than for their country. This is literally cemented by monuments who honor the fallen. They rarely speak of German soldiers, but still from sons and daughters of the place. Like this monument in Hamburg stating, 40,000 sons of the city gave their lives for you, 1914 to 1918, with the you meaning other Hamburgers, not Germans. And even today, the regional identity for many people weighs much higher than the national one. Pride for Germany isn't a big deal anyway, as our history reflects. But pride in your city, your state, your general region, that has been big since the HRE. This is why, be it on official buildings or private residences and gardens, you will much more likely see a flag of a city, a state, a football club or a gardening club than a German flag. In Hamburg, for example, the town hall itself bears the crest of Hamburg and space for a flag of the state of Hamburg. Occasionally, on specific days, the place in front will also fly the German, Hamburgian and European flags. And lastly, there is the all-ruining thing of Germany being split apart for pretty much 45 years, a thing whose ending I even lived through. Yes, I was already born and almost 2 years old when Germany got reunified. And I am not even that old. I was born in a country that doesn't exist anymore, and in retrospective is not even seen as a real country ever existing. But still, if I would describe myself, yes, Internationally, I would always state that I am German, but on a national level, I usually prefer to make clear that I am a born Saxon, now living in Hamburg. Even my alias reflects that, which is Ossi Eastborn, Ossi being a slur for people from East Germany, so the East German born in the East. And like me, there are several others who still identify as Ossi, as East Germans, as Saxons, as Brandenburgers, as Thuringians, as Mecklenburgers or Anhalter, even East Berliners. Even though today's young and middle-aged generations have never really seen or lived through a divided Germany, the separation is still very real. In Germany, we usually speak of the wall in the heads, as I have described in this video. It means that for a huge portion of especially East Germans, it feels like the wall is still there, dividing them from the West, and vice versa. And this is independent from age, as even kids often still feel the effects today, like me, who living in Hamburg was bullied for being an Ossi, being given the name Ossi, by kids my age, kids who did not even grasp the concept of East and West Germany and just repeat their parents at that time, since especially West Germans were not keen on all those poor, underdeveloped people just entering their countries. The effects are not only present in private, but also on a nationwide level. Almost every nationwide statistic is usually split in East and West. East Germans still earn significantly less than West Germans, they have more unemployed, are usually less satisfied with the government, and repay a so-called Solidaritätsbeitrag, a fee for solidarity, each month with our paychecks to rebuild the so-called new states. East Germans often feel that within the whole reunification they got cheated on hard, and they are more perceptive to extremist ideas, be it from the far right or the far left, and they do not trust the nation or West Germans. A situation that is improving, no question, but only very slow and only a little bit by a little bit. Maybe less and less houses are in ruins or just empty, factories abandoned for 30 years get rebuilt, but East Germany will not be up to par with West Germany for the foreseeable future. And this is not because they got let down by West Germans, but because the infrastructural damage, brain drain, mistrust and missing acceptance by their brothers over the fence over the course of 45 years GDR and a World War just before that left wounds that can't be fixed with money alone. And as a result, Germany will stay just barely unified as long as every state, every citizen can embrace the whole nation as their home without falling back to 1933. Thank you so much for watching. This was actually not the first full video done by myself on this channel, but the first time I scripted the whole thing on all of my channels. I hope it did not turn out too long and you could enjoy it. If you did so, please leave a like and subscribe and maybe even a comment below the videos. Ask me anything, tell me what you think, and if you want more scripted original videos. Do you know any misconceptions about Germany that even we as Germans believe? Let me know. And if you made it this far, just leave me a drinking salute of your home in the comments. With that, I say Prost and wish you a happy day, happy night, happy weekend and a happy week. Until next time, bye bye and see you soon. Germany is not only a country in the center of the European Union, both genau. Be it as a formidable foe holding back the Roman Empire, becoming the Holy Empire, that those are the people with the tiny sex or sacrament or skarma sex knives, Germania and the lack of unharmed mappers that meine Güte. Territory the Saxons lived in are not Germania and the lack of unharmed mappers that attempted to to the north, they were neighboring another little group just known as Sag mal! A bit later, after Napoleon, since often even small restaurants would have their own brewery in the back, and it is said to have originated in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East around 10,000 years ago. Genau. as found in an Alemanni grave in South Germany in the 6th. Yes, as former German Chancellor Angela Merkel said in a pre-network times of like sometimes even a TV and a cell, two of which in PD, which means prolonged, you know? And proposed a revolutionizing idea to his former officials and producers. Former? Nee. To his fellow officials and producers. A chocolate that would be without specifying any restrictions. In Germany, we usually speak about the wall in the heads, as I have described in this video. In Germany, we usually speak of the wall in the heads, as I have described in this video. Ask me anything, tell me what you think, ask me anything, tell me what you think, or... Fuck it.